We're tuned to the latest news reports coming out of Peru as we follow the tragedy of the airline flight Lanza 508, which crashed over the Amazon jungle 12 days ago on December 24, 1971. Updates tell us that rescuers have continued to search, trying to search by plane and helicopter to see if they can even locate a rough area as to where the plane went down. Unfortunately, radio contact was lost before the plane went down, and we do not know exactly where it might have been located. So the plane crashed somewhere within a few hundred square miles of the Amazon jungle. Search teams, including the renowned Seventh-day Adventist mission pilot Clyde Peters, who is an expert jump master, is involved, and they have been searching now for 12 days with no hope of finding anyone. Searches were being thought of being called off. But now, as of late last night, one survivor has emerged from the jungle, 17-year-old Julianne. She trekked for 11 days from the crash site in the jungle to the outskirts of civilization, finally arriving at the small mission town of Yarinacocha, where there is an Adventist hospital, a small Adventist bush hospital, and there she's receiving treatment for her many injuries, including a broken shoulder, including many cuts that had gotten infected by maggots along her trip, and for being, of course, quite hungry and dehydrated. This is getting everyone's interest back up in potentially extending the searches further. Will the rescuers go back out again? Stay tuned to find out. That was on a radio broadcast being listened to by Clyde Peters, Seventh-day Adventist mission pilot, expert jump master, meaning that he was an expert at jumping out of planes with a parachute. He was currently lying in his bed in a hut in the small mission town of Yarinacocha, the same place where Julianne was now being treated in the bush hospital. Why was he lying in bed instead of out searching? He was lying in bed because he was exhausted, and not just from the day-long searching, straining your eyes out of airplane windows, trying to spot wreckage down below in the trees. He was also exhausted because he had hepatitis. Hepatitis is an infection that you can get from mosquito bites. Now, it's not very common here in the United States, so don't freak out if you get a mosquito bite. I don't like mosquito bites, but you probably won't catch hepatitis from a mosquito bite. But in South America, in Peru, where this story takes place, many of the mosquitoes in the jungle carried hepatitis, and he had contracted it, and that would make his liver swell up. His liver sits right over here, and it would swell up and it would hurt him even more if he tried to eat, and it would make his skin and his eyes turn a yellow color when he was particularly sick, and he felt so weak. And the only way he'd been able to keep going day by day, trying to keep searching for the crash of the Lanza number 508, was because of two things. His wife Eleanor had been praying for him, and his wife Eleanor had been giving him hydrotherapy. She was putting compresses, hot towels on where his liver sat, and then cold towels, alternating those back and forth. That would bring the inflammation down enough that he could get up again the next day, go back out into the air in a plane or in a helicopter to search. And now he was laying in bed thinking, oh, can I go again? I have to go again. A survivor showed up. Of course I have to go. That means there could be more survivors. He got out of bed and made his way down the street to the bush hospital. And there, as he came to the door of one of the small little hospital rooms inside this hut, Julianne's father met him at the door. He'd met Julianne's father 4 days before. He had come to give him an update, telling him, look, we're not having any success being able to find any survivors. And I know you traveled here to the edge of the jungle to our town of Yarinacocha, just hoping that we'd have some good news, but I don't have any good news yet. And the father had yelled at him at that point, stop searching! I know my daughter's dead. Stop searching! And Clyde had told him, look, I'm praying, and I'm not giving up yet. Even though you tell me to go, I'm not quitting. And now, one of the many people that he'd been praying for had survived. And as he was met there at the door by her father was crying tears. And he said, thank you, your God didn't give up on her. He saved her. I couldn't believe it. And he entered into the room, and he saw the girl laying all bandaged up on the cot in that bush hospital. And she looked up at him and said, I don't know how I made it out of the jungle. I can't believe I survived, but my dad says that you were praying for me. Can I read a Bible? This was the kind of situations that Clyde Peters lived for, because he wanted to talk to people about God, and he gladly gave her a Bible. But he also had some questions for her, because he was hoping, since she was the only person who had been on that flight who had survived so far as they knew, and made it out of the jungle, then maybe she could give them some details of where she had traveled. They could maybe piece it together on a map. Okay, maybe this river, and then you cross this mountain, and then there was this thing, and maybe they could use that to narrow down where the plane might have crashed. She was able to give them enough details that using a map, they narrowed it down to probably about 15 square miles. Still a large area, but much smaller than 200 square miles. And now they could go back out and keep looking. But as Clyde was thinking about it, he thought, even if we find where the plane is now, if we can spot it through that thick jungle canopy, will we be able to do anything about it? Do you guys know what I mean when I say jungle canopy? It's not a canopy like a tent. What is it? What's a jungle canopy?
Where all the high up leaves and branches are, and they cover the forest floor.
High up leaves and branches that cover the forest floor. You're exactly right, Derek. Good job. So the canopy is an interlaced wall of branches just up on the top of the jungle. In the Amazon, there's thick trees growing everywhere. And so they couldn't see from planes and helicopters through the canopy to look for the plane. Now, even if they had a rough idea where the plane was located now, how could they get down there and do anything? A helicopter couldn't land. It'd be cool if you could land a helicopter and just have it like balancing on top of the canopy, but that wouldn't work. So Clyde came up with a plan. And he ran down to the airstrip where many of the rescuers and searchers have been setting up a base and been going out to do their flights to look for the plane. And he informed them what he had heard. And he showed them the map. And then he said, I've got an idea for a plan. What if we get out there and we go to that approximate area where the plane now is more centered down to, where we think the wreck might be, and then I jump out and parachute into the jungle. Like, how would that help? No. I jump out and I take a chainsaw with me, and when I get down, then I can cut a bunch of trees down, and you guys can start landing helicopters and bring more searchers. Okay, the searchers started nodding their heads. Now, I'll tell you who wasn't nodding their head when she heard about this plan. His wife, Eleanor. Are you sure you want to go jumping out of a plane or helicopter into the jungle? Clyde, I mean, you're an expert jump master. You've done 800 parachute jumps already in your life. You were one of the first Seventh-day Adventists to become a licensed jump master in the United States. But jumping into the jungle is so dangerous. He said, I know, but it's worth it. One girl made it out. There might be more. I better go. I got to check it out. So he began packing. Now, when you're going to jump out of an airplane, is there anything you think you might want to take with you? What's maybe the most important thing you might want to take with you out of an airplane? I hear water, but there might be something more important. What do you think? A parachute. Yes, a parachute. Oh, she's got some other ideas, like food. Yes, he did pack food. And, yes, things to survive. But the parachute was number one. Now, the parachute alone was a pretty big pack. That was over 100 pounds that he had to wear on his back. But then he was going to need to take other things with him. He had to borrow a chainsaw. He borrowed a brand new chainsaw from one of the rescuers, and he had to tie that to his harness. That was heavy. Have you ever tried to lift a real chainsaw? They're heavy. So now he had that on, and then he also had a day pack he had strapped to his chest, and he stuck some food and water in there. And then he also had his hunting knife strapped to his side, and he also had a flare gun tucked into his harness. The flare gun would be so that when he landed down below, if he found survivors, he could fire the flare gun, and they would know kind of where to come so that he could start setting up that jungle base by clearing the trees. A couple other things that he took with him. He also borrowed a .357 Magnum. Ooh! What would he need a gun for? Well, the Amazon is not all a friendly place. And there's some things that'll bother you there that are tiny. You wouldn't shoot them with a gun. Like mosquitoes and biting ants and centipedes and, yeah. But then you get bigger to things like snakes and jaguars and, wild pigs. And, yeah, you might want to have a gun to protect yourself. And then he also took along some water in his pack. And he looked at one other thing on the table. Should I bring that compass?
Yeah.
I don't know, he thought. I'm just going to be jumping into the jungle, clearing trees, and then they'll land a helicopter and pick me up. So why would I need a compass? I'll be fine.
No, he needs a compass.
What do you guys think? Is he going to be fine? Yeah, you've listened to these kinds of stories before. So he got into the helicopter. And the pilot who was taking him up took off. They flew out over the mapped area, and they started looking more carefully because now they had a more narrow area to search, and they spotted glinting metal. Yes! All right, we're in the right area. Now, it's still going to be a wide area to search because when a plane crashes, it doesn't just go crash, boom, and everything lands right in one little pile. It crashes and scatters. But at least he could have an idea of where to start looking. So they came back around over where they had spotted some glinting metal, and he jumped. Any of you ever wanted to jump out of a plane or a helicopter? Yeah, you guys are nuts, okay? It's a perfectly good vehicle, why leave it? But he had his equipment on, he jumped out, and he began falling from about 3,000 feet up down to that canopy below, which looked nice and springy and soft, but it really wasn't. And as he started falling, he pulled his parachute cord, and the parachute went whoosh, and filled up with air, just what you wanted to do. Something else it did, though, that he didn't want it to do. Apparently, Clyde Peters wasn't very good at one thing. He was good at other things, like piloting airplanes and helicopters and being able to jump into all sorts of conditions, but he wasn't apparently good at tying knots. And so as the parachute yanked him upwards, the chainsaw yanked downwards, and the rope tying the chainsaw to his harness fell off, came untied, whoop, and there went the chainsaw. The chainsaw didn't have its own separate parachute, it just took a nosedive whoop, into the jungle and disappeared through the canopy. Good luck finding that chainsaw. And now he started to realize just how serious this was. Because with no chainsaw, he couldn't cut down any trees. If he couldn't cut down any trees, no helicopters could land. And if helicopters couldn't land, how was he going to get out of the jungle?
And he had no compass.
Well, maybe he could find his way out of the jungle if he had a compass. Then he did what I want all of you kids to always remember to do. Anytime you're in a situation where you're like, oops, this is not going to go well. Uh-oh, I didn't expect this. You're going to shoot up something that we've called here in our primary tent a prayer-o. Shoot up a prayer arrow. It's a prayer that goes so fast you don't even have time to think of all the words. You just go, Jesus, help. And that prayer-o goes up. He sent up a prayer-o, and next thing he knew, he was hitting the canopy. Not soft and cushiony, even though it looked like it. It was a bunch of branches and intertwined vines, and as he fell through it, his parachute just tore and collapsed, and he began falling faster down towards the jungle floor. Lord, help! Another prayer went up, and he saw the ground rushing towards him, and thankfully, right at the last moment, 15 feet left to fall, and he was caught by his parachute in some branches. How am I going to get down from here, Lord? Thank you for getting me down and getting me stopped before I hit the ground, but how am I going to get down from here? He spun around a little bit. Oh, there's a vine. I can pull this, and he pulled his way over towards a tree, and he checked. No thorns on the tree, no bullet ants going up and down the tree. You guys ever heard of bullet ants? Josiah, do you own any bullet ants? Oh, what's that? It would be fun. Bullet ants, they're called that because they say that getting bit by a bullet ant feels as painful as being shot by a bullet. Yeah. So, no bullet ants. He grabbed onto the tree. He unhooked his harness. He was able to climb down the tree. All right, good. I should go ahead and let them know that I made it down here safely. I'm going to fire a flare to let them know. So he fired a flare up in the air. Ooh, boy. That canopy is so thick, I'm not even sure my flare made it out through the branches. Well, I'll tell you what I'll do in the meantime. I'm going to take my .357 Magnum. I'm going to fire a couple shots in the air just to be able to let any survivors know that I'm here. Maybe they'll come towards where they hear the sound. Maybe somebody's lying there, starving after 11 days. Maybe they got a broken arm or broken leg, but they'll hear me. They'll take hope. So he took his .357 Magnum out, fired 2 shots. Bang, bang. And he listened. And he thought he heard a sound. So he took off his back harness, the one that had the parachute attached to it. He had unclipped the parachute from that. He took off his back harness, dropped it on the ground, and began running towards the sound. And he ran, pushing through the jungle branches, looking. Is there somebody there? No, nobody there. Oh, too bad. Well, I better go back. And pick up my pack because, that way I can have my equipment, my food and water's in that pack. I better go back and find it in the jungle. Which way did I come from? He couldn't find his pack with his food and his water. Okay, well, wait. Not all is lost. I've still got my flare gun, still got the .57, still got my hunting knife. Uh-oh. Hunting knife must have fallen out of the sheath when he was tumbling through the tree branches. No hunting knife. And I have my day pack. Oh, yeah. But I have my day pack still. Let me check through it. He started looking through the day pack, and he found pack of peanuts? There must have been something else in my day pack. Oh no, there's a hole torn in the bottom of my day pack. All he had left was a pack of peanuts to survive on. And he started to feel really down. What am I going to do? Maybe I shouldn't have come. He was starting to doubt himself. I thought I was helping God. I thought God was going to take care of me, and now I'm in a mess. What am I going to do? Okay, I can at least search for some survivors. He wandered around a bit, looking for survivors. Night was coming on. He couldn't find them. Okay, I guess I'm going to have to make a shelter for myself. It always rains at night in the Amazon in this area. I'll make a shelter for, I don't have my knife. I can't cut any of those thick branches. I'll get some leaves. He tore some leaves, and the rain began to come down. How hard do you think it rains in a place called the rainforest?
Really hard.
Yeah, when it's in the name, there's a lot of it. It had a lot of forest, and it had a lot of rain. And the rain came pouring down, and he was trying to use some leaves to cover himself, and that didn't work. And the ground around him just was getting softer and muddier and softer and muddier. By the time he woke up the next morning, he hadn't even really slept. He was about up to his waist in just mud, just sitting on the ground, just cold. The only consolation was that the part of him that was covered in mud wasn't getting bit by the mosquitoes. Only the top part of him was.
Yeah.
What a miserable night.
Yeah.
He was pretty depressed, got out, shook his pants off, kicked off his boot. Oh, can't believe this. Maybe I shouldn't. No. I'm going into the maybes and the what ifs. What I know is God loves me and he cares for me and I'm going to pray. And so he said a prayer and then he sang the song that his family always sang that he had mentioned to his wife. Anywhere with Jesus I can safely go. Anywhere he leads me in this world below. Anywhere without him dearest joys would fade. Anywhere with Jesus, I am not afraid. And he started feeling a bit better. And then he also thought, that passage, that quote from that woman who's written so many things in our church, Ellen White, she wrote that passage, and we've memorized it in our family. And we've used this so many times. She wrote, we have nothing to fear, except as we shall forget the way the Lord has led us in our past history. God's led me so much in my past history. So many things have already brought me to this point. So many things that you're going to find out about later this week, by the way. And so he got up and was feeling better, feeling stronger. In fact, that was weird. He hadn't had anything really decent to eat in a whole day, and yet he was feeling stronger than yesterday. He began going through the jungle. I'm going to try to find my way out of here. If I can find a river, I'll be able to follow that stream. I think I'll be able to get there. What's that? What's that overhead? The sound of helicopters. I got to fire my flare gun. He dropped his day pack down on the ground and began running. Fire the flare gun. Oh no, the flare gun was all soaked with rain and mud. It wouldn't fire. Well, I'll just go get my day pack with my pack of peanuts. Which way did I come from again?
Oh.
Clyde wasn't good at two things, tying knots and also just like keeping track of his stuff. And now he was feeling even more down. Okay, no, I'm not going to let this get me down. I'm going to have hope. I'm going to have hope that God is watching over me. I hear a stream. He started walking towards the stream and he got to the water. And it looked pretty clear. It was better than nothing. Who knows what kind of diarrhea I might give him later, but it was water. And he knelt down and he began drinking water out of the stream. I got a question for you guys. If you were going to picture like one of the worst situations you could find yourself in if you're by water in the jungle, what kind of animal would you put in that stream?
Alligator.
I heard some people call it out. You can call it out.
Alligator.
Yeah, it was a crocodile. It was a 15-foot long crocodile. Apparently on the opposite bank. He hadn't noticed it because he was laying there still like a log. But as he crouched by the stream and he looked, there, only about like right here was a 15-foot crocodile. And as he looked up and his eyes met the crocodile charged right across that stream, right towards him. And Clyde, through his head, went a couple things. A prayer, God help! A quick list of all the things he had that he could possibly use. It was a really quick list because he had nothing. He lost his knife, he lost his gun, the flare gun didn't work, he didn't have anything. And so Clyde did the only thing that he could do in that situation. He already prayed. He had only one thing left to do. He jumped. Now, how many of you kids have been here for prior primary camp meetings? How many of you have heard me tell stories before? Yeah. How many of you have ever been disappointed when I stop a story right at the most exciting part? And you're like, oh, what? Okay, no. This is not like that, okay? Because usually what happens is, I stop the story, I'm like, you're gonna have to come back tomorrow, you hear how the story ends, and you guys are like, oh! Which makes me feel so terrible inside. And then the next day, I tell you what happened, you're like, oh, okay, we get to find out what happened, and we go on. No, this is different. See, I've been thinking about the fact that there's some kids who only get to come to camp meeting on the weekends, on Sabbath. So, is anybody here who's not gonna be here during the week? Yeah, who has to go home for the week, and then will you be coming back next weekend? Next Sabbath? No? Maybe? Oh, no? Okay, well, if there's any of you who are going to be coming back next Sabbath, I've got good news for you and bad news for everybody else. Nobody else is going to get to find out what happened in that story until you do, because this cliffhanger lasts all the way until next Sabbath when I'll finish that part of the story. But starting tomorrow, we'll hear more stories about Clyde Peters. I know. This is how much I think about you guys all year long. What can I do to torture you? Happy Sabbath!